I'm Ian Watson. I'm the head of DevOps at Callcredit. Just out of interest, a quick show of hands. Who's heard the term DevOps at all? Sweet. Who actually thinks they knows what it means? Okay. This is good. I have something to work with. Fantastic. Okay, so I'm going to talk a bit about the journey we've been through at Callcredit over the last 12, 18 months, and associated with the transformation piece that Anne-Marie and Chris were talking about earlier. So, DevOps. Here's Agile. Scrum team, sprints, and at the end of your sprints, you aim to have a piece of working functionality every time. So that's fantastic. So we're not wasting time, we're not saving up deployments. You're ready to go, each sprint, and then you hit this. So I don't know, again, I'm assuming I've got mostly developers, testers, Scrum Master types in here, not so many operations guys. So I'm assuming you've hit this wall of confusion. When you're ready to go, you finish your sprint, you package your stuff up, and you go, great, let's get this live, and operations go, no. We can't change stuff. It'll upset the stability. There's not a window for this. We're doing patching. There's maintenance going on. And it kind of messes up the whole problem that Agile hopes to solve. It stops you getting those regular, reliable, often deployments, and then starts to back you up into what you don't want, which is saving up big amounts of deployments that you do once every 3, 6, 18 months, I think, to remember a project once. Heaven help us. So, where are we? Next. Okay. So, that's how you see it. What the operations guy sees is this. You're all the saboteurs who are trying to mess up their nice, stable environments they're looking at. Okay? Okay. And by way of an example of how, again, we don't help ourselves sometimes, this is when we do get to a deployment, this is what gets handed to the ops guys who have the access to live. So this is an actual deployment plan from some years ago, I'm happy to say. But the development team handed this, along with some folders of code and packages and things, to the ops team and said, right, we want you to do this on 12 servers manually, please, at 4 o'clock in the morning. Don't make any mistakes, though. How do you think that went? So, bam. We were at this point where we were starting to want to do more things more quickly, but we were still banging into the normal challenges everyone has in increasingly bigger companies. And again, this has all come from the fact that Callcredit has grown very quickly. So when I started as a developer some 13 years ago, I was still a child, it was a small company. There was about 50 people in the company, and we kind of did all these things. So you were the ops guy and the developer, and you rolled it out, and then you got up in the middle of the night to fix it because you'd done something stupid. As companies grow, you tend to get more departments, and as you get more departments, the focus for those departments gets onto the thing they care about, which for operations is stability, which for development is change. So, bear with me. Apart from having the challenges around manual deployments causing things to go wrong, our pre-production environments looking less and less like the live environments, giving us less confidence about what we were deploying. There was a massive bottleneck on the operations stuff, so we were asking DBAs and application delivery engineers to do our deployments for us. And they would say, yep, absolutely, I'll do it. Oh, live's broken, I'm going to go and fix that instead. There's a bottleneck there. And similar bottleneck, so actually the way to improve it is to get the ops guys ahead of time working with the development teams to try and to deliver the right things. But again, they were too busy working on keeping live service live, which is what they should be doing. So basically, we were running very, very fast, like this hamster, in case you were probably wondering about the hamster. Running very, very fast and kind of staying in the same place. And as we grew and grew to stay in the same place, we had to run faster and faster and faster. New owners come in, Americans, with an aggressive target of doubling the revenue over the next 5 years. There is nothing we can do to this hamster to get it run fast enough for that to happen. So we needed to move from the point where we were sprinting really quicker to stay in the same place, to be able to run around a bit more and actually move somewhere we wanted to get to. Okay, so at this point, it was quite sensibly decided that we would take some of the operations guys and move them across the invisible barrier that often exists between IT ops and development to start to work with the development teams. Now, I think the impression I get is initially this was just to act as deployment monkeys. Just a guy with permissions to follow these Word documents, get up at 4 in the morning, do everything perfectly. Because humans are really good at getting things perfectly right in a manual way at 4 in the morning. But it was flagged up at that point by a man still only known as our bearded leader, who's no longer with us, sadly. Well, he's not dead, we left Callcredit. Dead to us. That maybe DevOps was a thing to look at. So, 2 years ago, if you were to say, you should do DevOps, I'd have gone, you what now? Pretty much like the rest of you. I might have heard it, but actually what does that mean? So, we created 2 teams, and we started to try and work out exactly what it is we wanted to do. We read an awful lot of stuff. We talked to people. We looked at blogs. We looked at websites. And the good thing is there are millions of websites about this out there. So it's very good. Even the Wikipedia entry is surprisingly good on DevOps. As a side, if anyone's considering looking into DevOps as a way of almost finishing what Agile starts, the Phoenix project, and I'm getting no commission for this, sadly, is an absolutely blinding place to start, and explains and takes you through the story in kind of a novel way of what we're trying to do with DevOps. So I would force everyone from your CTO to the cleaning lady to be reading this, if that's what you're doing. So, what actually is DevOps? The acronym that usually gets, the 4-letter acronym that usually gets used is CAMS for DevOps, which stands for collaboration, automation, measuring, and sharing. It's also a lot of other things that's on there. So again, there's a lot of tools, but DevOps is not just tools. Basically, it's exactly what it says. It's getting the development and operations teams working together and collaborating. And to that end, the biggest word on there, quite deliberately, is culture, because that's what we're talking about. We're talking about fundamentally changing the culture of how developers and operations staff actually see their worlds. Incidentally, that's also the hardest thing to do. So, and other things that you'll read about DevOps. So DevOps very much came, and it was probably coined maybe 10 years ago now, and it came from Agile sysadmins, kind of cool Linux guys, you know, thinking outside the box, doing open source things. So consequently, you'll hear things like, well, you can't do DevOps in a Windows environment. And it's a thing for startups. It's not something you'd ever want to do on an enterprise scale. It just doesn't work that way. And also, if you're mostly data-centric, which incidentally at Callcredit we are, then again, it's not the thing for you. It works for lovely cloud web apps and things. We hadn't heard that sort of really much during our research, or it might have put us off. But fortunately, it's absolute bunkum anyway. Okay, so topologies. So this is where we were. What I actually could do is draw an increasingly thick black line through the middle here as people gradually walled themselves into more and more silos, focusing on the thing they should be focusing on, but to the detriment of the other. Where we want to be is there, with everyone smoothly working together, getting on, everything's just happening, they're all helping each other. The devs are delivering better stuff to live, which means the ops guys' life is easier because keeping live service on is easier. However, getting from there to there, again, culturally, as you can probably imagine, is a massive leap. So, the plan was to have dev, ops, and then in the middle, the two teams we currently have, to start to pull it all together. Now, I don't know, the few people who put their hands up about, yes, no, I know about DevOps, there may be alarm bells going on here, because one of the first things you read and everywhere is DevOps is not a team. It's all right, we built 2 teams. But bear in mind, it's not a thing to panic about. We're trying to get to there. As long as we keep our eyes focused on that, we don't end up with forever having a DevOps team to do the DevOps for the other 2 teams, which doesn't get us, it just creates another new and interesting silo to worry about. The teams that we created, system build. So this was comprised mainly of DBAs and application support engineers. The idea was to embed them into the now product teams. And again, so we kind of already cranking on the move from projects to product teams at this point. And again, the more I talk to people and the more we look at how other people are implementing DevOps in their companies, you need product teams. You can't do this with projects. You have to have a vested interest in coming around the loop again and making things better for yourselves and everyone else. So system build were there to work with the teams to bring operational requirements. We've stopped calling them non-functional requirements because it feels like something that's not that important then if it's non-functional and tends to get dropped out, as again you might have experienced in your own projects. To keep the focus on that and to remind people that things like monitoring is important. The way you handle errors is important to the ops guys. When you're doing on your dev system and some giant string of XML pops up, that might be entirely fine for you, but is the guy who's answering the BlackBerry at 2 in the morning going to be able to get something useful out of that to know, I just need to restart the service? They're also, the second biggest focus beyond the culture side of things is automation. So those manual deployment plans had to go. So system build focus was very much in the teams, working in a better way to deliver better things, better to live. Team 2 was platform build. So this is a team more focused around the infrastructure and middleware. Not to be embedded in the teams, to start to act more as a platform as a service. So at current state, all of our infrastructure is not in the cloud, is on-premise. It took about a day to build each server. And that's not including things like configuring firewalls, allocating storage. So there was a necessary bottleneck there that platforms aim to solve, and the way we aim to solve that is infrastructure as code. So again, it's often seen as more a cloudy thing. So I can write you code that describes how the service should look in a Linux world, but there's absolutely, it turns out, no reason on earth that we can't do that on-premise in Windows if we put our minds to it. So, armed with our 2 not DevOps teams, our build teams, and an idea now of what we thought DevOps was, we created the now too awesome plan. So we looked at where we were now, and we broke it down into kind of 4 topics, culture being the first, most important, monitoring and measuring environments and infrastructure, and continuous delivery. We looked at where we were now, and then we imagined, if we had a magic wand, what it would look like in the future, or what it could look like in the future, or what it probably couldn't ever look like in the future, but if we were really lucky, and we did have a magic wand, that's what we'd make it look like. So the awesome state is absolutely not one that we were guaranteeing we would ever reach, but it was certainly, that was the direction that we needed to be driving in. So these posters started to go up around the business, because broadcasting is the only way you can start to change the culture and get people thinking differently and get people understanding what you're talking about. And again, to begin with, there was just a little group of us talking about DevOps. We kept talking about DevOps, and we kept doing it louder and louder, putting the posters up for people to see, putting the scary walking skeletons up, which confused a lot of people. That's the single thing I've had to explain more often than anything else. Why is it Halloween? We're going to have a different one for Christmas with snowflakes on? No. The other trick we used is we started sending an email to everyone. Spam, I guess. Every week, just highlighting the few little good things that were going on. So where a team had managed to package up a deployment, so now it was no longer a half-hour manual job, but a simple click of a button, then we would start telling people about it and going, that's a good thing. Celebrating successes and failures. Again, getting away from being frightened of failing is an important key, because at least people start trying to improve then, rather than maintaining the status quo, trying not to upset the apple cart. Okay, so we had a whole plethora of things that we wanted to change, needed to focus on a few of them to actually get things done. Fortunately, some nice people from various companies had done a state of software delivery survey over a space of a few years, so internationally across England, America, Lithuania. And what we started to see was we were far from having the only people with these problems. And as you can see, absolutely number one, manual state resulting in errors. Oh, well, we've got that, which is nice. Inconsistent configuration across environments. Well, that comes from the manual errors. So yeah, that's us too. Miscommunication between teams. Well, yeah, that's exactly what I've just been talking about. The ops teams and the dev teams weren't singing the same song. They had different drivers. So, with that bearing in mind, and manual state resulting in errors kind of being an obvious highlight, the title, Death to Manual Deployments, was our new motto. We would slay them mercilessly, like we would dragons. Okay, how often do you deploy? So, one of the key statistics that we were seeing was, as we brought automation in, so the amount of deployments goes up. And I think this is an audience I don't need to explain to you that's a good thing. So many audiences don't get that and think that releasing often is necessarily a problem, and therefore you'll go wrong more often. But with anything, the more you practice it, the better you get at it. You wouldn't turn up for a basketball tournament having never played for 3 years. So again, we saw across the board what people were reporting was after they'd introduced automation into their world, they'd moved from, well, monthly or less, mostly, and we were at Callcredit certainly guilty of that, much less in some cases, yearly or less, to a point where overall, nearly 3/4 are deploying weekly or more. So that was certainly somewhere we felt we wanted to be. And the important key statistic that also came out of a lot of these surveys and reports was that there isn't a correlation between deploying more often and getting things wrong more often. So this is the point we have to sell to the IT ops guys and start to get them to understand and be comfortable with. Because immediately you say, I want to deploy more often, they go, oh, you're going to break it more often then? Oh, I deleted that one. Right. So, in order to remove the manual deployments, we looked at tools. There's a lot of tools out there. There really are. And absolutely, the thing I'd say as you look towards this is choose the tools that are right for you. So, just because your friend in that company over there says, oh, we've got this cool tool and it does this and it's shiny and all the hip kids are using it, don't necessarily pick that one. Try them out, understand what your requirements are, because you're all going to be different. That was the one we picked. We were focused on ease of use. We were in a Windows environment. This particular tool, what it likes best is to run PowerShell scripts in Windows. Perfect for us. And it was very easy just to lay over the top of where we did have good processes. So we didn't want the people who were doing good things already to have to go back and re-engineer all their work. Octopus drapes nicely across it. Boom. So we created 2 pilot teams with an aim to start doing DevOps. We put the system build members in. We teed up the platform team to start spinning up environments that were repeatable and version controlled. Version controlling your environments is big and clever. With a focus on automation, deploying often, and getting things through that pipeline as quickly and often as possible. We also did a lot of work with change management. So again, there's often a feeling, again, that change management is there as almost a blocker to get in the way, and you've got to fill in some forms, and why are they doing this? Why can't I just do my deployment? But actually, when we sit down and had a chat with them and explain what they were doing, that the message was, this is brilliant. We love this. We'll work with you now to make these automated deployments much more easy in terms of change management, because it's a repeatable process. It's an auditable process, which is exactly what change management wants. And a useful carrot and stick approach to getting other people on board. So again, if we can remove this laborious manual change management process and give them a nice easy one, then it's a good thing to work on. So basically, those teams were focused on continuous delivery. And I'm sure that's a phrase that people here are very aware of. But to me, the answer to why DevOps is because continuous delivery. This is the overall what we're trying to get to. Not continuous deployment. So let's not pretend we're an enterprise, big-sized company. We've got big data assets. We're not Facebook or Netflix. We can't just be pumping stuff all the way to live. But we have something that's always potentially releasable. And we can then put those release schedules in the hand of the business. So this is where we start to bring the business in and get them on board going, well, if you want to release, you just need to tell us. We've got something always ready to go. In the past, it was very much, we'd like a release. Okay, well, we'll just need to merge all these branches up, back into the main, create a new build, get them through the pipe, maybe a month and a half. Is that all right? With this, we can go, yep, no, next release window. All we've got to do is press a button. Okay, yes. So I mentioned earlier that you can do DevOps in a large data-centric environment, but it's not easy. There's no point in pretending databases don't present a new and interesting challenge. But again, we did some work with the pilot teams and started to look at the sorts of things that were being deployed. And do you know what? Most of the changes we deploy to databases, despite having the pesky data in, we can ignore that for now, are non-destructive. We're adding new procedures. We're adding new views on the data we already have. We're adding new tables, new columns, but nothing that is not undoable. So the only time you need to start to worry is if you're dropping data out. But hey, 90% of the changes were added functionality, new data sets. So once you realize that, you can start to think about databases in exactly the same way as you would software. You can source control it, you can package up deployments, and you can deploy those packages in an automated fashion with an automated tool. As long as you've got in the back of your mind, you have to think, am I doing something destructive at this point? So again, the skill set of database developers needs to shift slightly to start thinking about things in a different way. You're not writing custom scripts that do a thing. You need to be thinking, well, actually, if this goes wrong, if this is a problem, what's my backup? Do I need to stop, actually restore a backup, which is going to take 2 hours, in which case, okay, we slow down the pipeline at this point. For us, again, mostly Microsoft, mostly SQL Server. There's kind of two options if people are using that technology. Microsoft provides one with its SSDT data tools, and Redgate provide another perfectly good Redgate SQL deploy. Both work fine in the same way and effectively do a desired state on your database. You go, this is what I want it to look like. However it starts, whether that's nothing or a previous version, then it will make it look like it. Again, as long as we bear in mind those few times we're doing something destructive and proceed with a bit more caution. So, database pilot team. We now know we can do package deployments. We've set up our automated pipeline. Would anyone like to guess at what point we introduced the automated deployment tool? There was no absolute decision to do more deployments. It just happened, which was brilliant. Because we could, and because the change management process became easier, so we did many more deployments to our test environments, and then we started doing more deployments to our pre-production environments, and then we started more deployments all the way to live. And you know what? The first 5 deployments were a total disaster. They broke every time. Things went wrong. Permissions weren't there. We didn't know why things weren't working. Since those first 5, every single deployment has gone absolutely smoothly. We haven't had any problems at all. We don't need to run around finding a DBA to do the deployment. It takes no special skill set to press a green button marked deploy. To the point where we had directors, managing directors doing deployments. It was kind of a competition between them, I think, at one point, to see who could do the first actual live deployment. So again, great success, and just by its nature starts to drive those good behaviors of releasing stuff often. It starts to drive the good behaviors of not expecting someone to do something manually when actually you're just being lazy. You could package that up. Okay, meanwhile, platform and infrastructure. So, tools. There are, as I said, a lot of DevOps tools out there, which we looked at from an infrastructure perspective. Things like Puppet, Chef are generally the most well-known ones. But again, like all the other DevOpsy type stuff, they've grown very much from a Linux environment. So that, again, that's where they're happiest serving. So what the platform team eventually came to the realization was, actually, we've probably already got a lot of the tools that will do this for our Windows environment. I say that now, times are changing. So Microsoft, obviously Azure, is now embracing open source, apparently. You've got Puppet and Chef baked into their Azure servers. Docker as well, I believe, is a chosen partner. Anyway, so the tools we had were PowerShell, because Windows, if you want to do pretty much anything scripted in Windows, PowerShell will do it. And Systems Center, Operations Manager and Systems Center Manager allowed us already, with the tools that we had on site, and we're kind of just using for a bit of monitoring at the moment, but with a bit of effort and focus, to start to define VM templates and version control these templates that could then be deployed through Orchestration Manager, be patched along the way, and we've got a known state and we've got a version number on a server. So this is good, because then we can make the live server, the pre-production server, the test servers all look the same. We're not having someone setting them up manually. So again, obviously infrastructure has exactly the same challenges as software deployments. If you do them manually, they're not going to be the same. And we used the one tool we did buy, I guess, licenses for, is Leankit, for a Kanban way of working. So again, platform were very much an as a service, so people could stick a ticket in, request a server, they would pull it off the Kanban board and get stuff done. Okay, things that went well so far. My proudest achievement is that I think 80–90% of people in Callcredit probably have heard of DevOps and have a good idea what we're talking about. And that's one of the things, it's not a team. And I've probably said that 1,000 times over the last 18 months. So I think people believe me now, even though we've still got 2 teams. But we have a DevOps community. So we've actually got a group of interested people, some from development, some from operations, who aren't in those 2 build teams, who will regularly chat about all things DevOpsy. They'll chat about automation. The ops guys will start to go, oh, this product, the monitoring in it is appalling. When it falls over, I don't know what to do. And the developers will go, oh, yeah, that's a good point. I now start to understand your position. Collaboration. So this is, and as the culture starts to kick in, the walls start to break down, and we can all start to move forward and help each other, really. A new definition of done. So this is one for the product teams. So again, developers, it's very easy to, I don't know, I've been there, I was one, to get into the kind of habit of code's done, testing's done, brilliant, sorted, on to the next thing. No, nothing is done until it is working in production. There's an argument to say actually done's not done until it's then decommissioned and you've got rid of the product entirely, but stretching the point. So yeah, so we've got product teams who care about their code getting all the way to live and it's running in live. packaged scripted deployments have very much gone from being the exception, it's my octopus, to being the norm. So we now have very, very, very few deployments that require a Word document to be followed by a person. So Octopus usage, since I've written this actually, is probably up to 60% of our products now. As we start to move forward and the product teams we've introduced are starting to go, right, first thing I need to do, get my walking skeleton, get my pipeline working to live. And even when we're not using Octopus, those deployments are packaged up, and getting things onto services is a matter of copying it and running a deploy command. Infrastructure is no longer the bottleneck. So pretty much getting a server, I say, if you're building at the speed of 1 a day, it is always, always, always going to be the bottleneck to delivery. We're now at the point where we're approximately 17 times faster at deploying servers than the old manual method. Plus, on top of that, it's not manual, so we know what the servers look like, not what we think they probably should look like. This was, I believe, I'm told, announced at one of the senior IT leadership meetings and got a standing ovation, which was nice. But I'm not going to pretend everything is smooth sailing and easy and shiny and wonderful. It's a lot more awesomer than it was. But culture change is really, really hard. Don't underestimate that. And we're not just talking about introducing new tools. You are talking about changing the way people feel about how they work, who they work with, and what their aims are. So we're still periodically having to go down to the IT ops guys and go, you know, you've helpfully fixed something in live. Well, that's bad. And explaining that to an operations guy whose job is to make things work in live is very difficult. We've still got developers who actually think, well, you know, why would I worry about it? It works in the live environment. It works on my computer. It's someone else's problem to run it on the live servers. So we've still got work to do, and we'll still keep banging that particular drum. And we have got technical challenges still ahead of us. So one of the first things as we moved to that automated infrastructure as code type thing that we found out was we have got so many mismatches in our environments. There are so many little things that are not the same across pre-production, live, and system and integration tests. You're out there. So we've learned a huge amount about our environments, and it's not all great. But knowing it's important. But and also from the infrastructure side, our kind of legacy networks, there's a lot of, it's kind of like a tangled rat's nest in there. You know how networks tend to proliferate. So automating that is a big challenge. And in some places, how fast is too fast? So we can now build 50 VMs, 50 servers on a weekend. We'll come back on a Monday and they're all there. Fantastic. However, that doesn't mean we can provision enough storage for them all to use in the same amount of time. So we still then have to wait for purchasing cycles of storage, that to be allocated. So we're kind of starting to create new bottlenecks. And I think that's a good thing because it means we're moving forward. We just focus on the next bottleneck and improve that as well. So we've still got plenty of work to do before we get our developers and DBAs carving that on trees as they sit in the sun sharing a sandwich. We're working with the ops leadership now to get them driving that from the top down, as well as sort of the grassroots supports. So one of the big challenges for next year will be to find a way of aligning things like objectives. So rather than having development product teams driven by pushing change out, operations teams driven by stopping change happening, we can all have a nice business objective of generally doing things better in somehow. Okay, the future. We're next looking at, we'll finish off the move from project teams to product teams, which those of you who were here for Chris and Anne-Marie's show earlier. Really treating pre-production and live the same. So this is one of those mantras that we keep repeating, guys. Don't treat pre-production like your dev environment. It's your dress rehearsal. And we need to breed more champions. So we're starting to get people in development, operations, change management, as I said, championing these processes. We've got work to do with security, and I want the business start to understand and buy into it and start to push the product teams to be doing these things as much as I am. Monitoring, we need much more monitoring. We're very good at alerting, telling me when a server's fallen over. We're not so great at understanding when a server's going to fall over in a day or two. And that needs to be driven again, not from either one team, but both teams working together. It's both teams' problems. Things like log aggregation, so we can start to get the product teams, the developers, seeing what's happening in live, seeing the event logs, being able to read the log files and help the ops guys work towards getting things more stable. Environments, so we're looking to move into the cloud, be that Azure, AWS, whatever, where it's appropriate. So again, putting terabytes of data might not be the right thing to do, but certainly some of our web-based stuff will do. Things like, blue-green deployments. So again, getting away from these 4 AM deployments. So even though we're still in a nice automated octopus deployment fashion, we still all have to come in at 4 in the morning, because that's when we're allowed to stop the service very briefly, switch over to new things. So focusing on being able to do that in a seamless fashion. And again, the move to the cloud will help with that. And continuous performance testing. Mr. Mounsey. Didn't even remember I had that in. Doing it right. And again, I'm still quite sure where continuous performance testing ends and monitoring begins, personally. Yeah. Okay. The takeaway for me is anyone can do DevOps. So we work in a highly regulated financial industry. We've got big amounts of data. Doesn't mean we can't do it. We can all start to improve those smaller, more rapid, reliable releases, which we'll do. And we'll keep driving towards that definition of awesome, which we'll continue to adjust as we move on and learn new things. But I assume it looks something like that. Thank you.
Okay, now time for questions.
So everyone's asleep.
Let's see, maybe in the back somebody has a question, so they're already sleeping.
Yeah. Can't hear any snores. I'll take that as a good sign. No?
Strange, I could say. That means I need to ask a question.
If the question's what is DevOps, I should probably just leave.
Okay. Honestly, like, I have one question. You had a slide like with a graph, like when you started like deploying more to live. The only question was like, live releases you had like, you have what, like couple steps like? Can we go back to this slide?
Oh,
here we go. So
okay.
I believe here you had an improvement.
Yeah. So
and as I see, production is right over there. So my question is, what keeps it so long to go to production?
So this isn't time, this is number of releases. So this is getting lots and lots of changes into the environments. So we'd expect to see a lot more things going to the test, a few more going to, hopefully, and it looks kind of like that, pre-production and live are mostly the same, because anything that goes to pre-production you would hope is absolutely a release candidate.
Okay, so basically here you're making a lot of bugs and only there you're getting the right ones.
Yes. But we're finding the bugs early.
Okay, that's Agile.
Which is the important thing, yeah. This is Agile.
Okay, maybe somebody has a question? Come on, guys. I know you can do better. One over there. Yes, finally.
I was going to say, I've obviously just explained it perfectly. Everyone.
Which slide will need to open?
No. So basically, I think we missed some slides, but that DevOps as a person, or should they be in the teams? Like, for example, if we have multiple Scrum teams, should it be like shared person, or should it be separate group with somehow aligned goals with all groups, or how to structure it?
So I think in an absolutely ideal world, you'd want just to have development teams and operation teams, and some of the guys in the operations teams will be more focused on the product development, and other guys in those teams will be more focused on live service. So again, I don't think you should try and balance those two together. So having someone who is live service and supposed to be helping the product teams never ever works, because live service will always win, quite rightly. So you need to give someone the focus. Now, it shouldn't be a different team. So what we've done there is we've called them teams, but actually it's just a segregation of duties. We've got DBAs in the system build team, and we've got DBAs in the operations team. Still DBAs, it's just these guys are trying to help with delivery and designing the right things to go into live, and so that they can be supported easily. Whereas these guys are more focused on, are the services up and running? Is the capacity there? Are we running out of space? Are we right service pack? That sort of thing. So was that the sort of thing you were meaning? And we tend to cover multiple products with one, so you don't need one per Scrum team. No, I think not. And it very much depends on the maturity of the team as to how much help and support along the road they'll need, really. So I know we've got some of the teams, we kind of don't need much help at all. They get it, they're doing it right, they're engaging where they need to be asking questions about live. Other teams, completely the other way. We need to drag them kicking and screaming into the future. In a nice way.
There is a hand over there.
Just trying to make her have to walk as far as possible. Who's next?
How long it takes for you to have a sprint as the task is done when it is deployed to production? As I heard it.
So is that how long does it take to get code from writing it into production?
Yeah, how long is the sprint for you in your
I think it very much depends on the product teams themselves. I think generally 2 weeks or 3 weeks. So 2 weeks is mostly the standard. The idea of the continuous delivery model, though, I guess, is that so you could potentially release every day if that's what you're designing to and working for. So we try and encourage teams, or I try and encourage the developers, stop branching. You know, just work on the main branch. Everything you do should be potentially a live candidate for release when we're talking about continuous delivery. Now, the appetite's not there from the business and the clients to do that, but being able to do it means that when you do need to release, you can. But yeah, normally it's a 2 week. But certainly you should be deploying to pre-production as often as possible with live candidates, and then just promoting things live in a speed that fits with the clients we have. So again, some of our clients are big old banks, and they don't want changed every day. Uh-oh. Hi, Dennis.
Have you thought about any changes moving to cloud might potentially bring to you?
Say that again.
When you move to the cloud,
Yep.
have you thought how DevOps is going to evolve
Yeah,
to the cloud?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess a lot of the cultural stuff is going to stay the same. We still need to be thinking about how we support this. The infrastructure side of things is going to be very different. We're still going to need to be able to provision infrastructure. We should be able to design things so they are quickly scalable. So the challenge we have with storage at the moment, if I go to Amazon and go, I'd like another couple of terabytes, that Amazon will go, give me your credit card and I will give you the. So we can scale quickly. So that will, by its nature, change the how we architect the system. So there's going to be a lot of work for the platform team, especially to work towards that. Again, where we want to be finally is to pull those teams back under the operations umbrella, probably kind of doing the same roles, but leading the way and making sure we've got smooth collaboration between development and operations.